be talking about the evolving relationship between creativity and AI-driven automation. And I am joined by some of the masters of the industry here. We've got Pat Murphy from MCA, MurphyCobb Associates. We've got Christine from TripAdvisor. We have Hannah from Adobe and Olga from Monks. So I'm just going to dive in. We're going to make this slightly informal. There is a structure here, but I'm going to let the creativity of the audience and the panelists here shine through. First question, panelists. With the new introduction of generative AI and now agents into the production workflow, what are you seeing as the major differences in the new process of producing content, be it written, video, what have you? And I'll direct the first question to Olga to respond to.
Thank you, Tanya.
Yeah.
I mean, it's only good news for production, to be honest. First of all, creative ego is shifting from individuals to teams. Production is no longer the end of line, but actually a part of the creative engine. And we now play on a wider territory, if you will. Not only production, but also workflow design, workflow engineering, and user interface architecture. If you think about it, actually the whole creative process suddenly turned into something that resembles agile software development. What we do up front, we do the discovery. Here, consultants take a big role. Then we invite creative technologists, can really not do anything without those guys. They run rapid prototyping, R&D, multiple iterations of testing in collaboration with creative directors. Funny enough, creative director here becomes a quality assurance person, right? Once creative director blesses the prototype, it goes into development. Here we work with UI designers and developers. And then finally, the whole thing, the whole product or workflow lands on my lap, where I, as operations, can actually put it to action, document, and train.
Yep. That's a very interesting perspective. And then, so Olga, speaking from the perspective of scaled content, when we look at the creative origination side of it, right, there's a massive difference because you can actually run an entire production entirely remotely. You don't need to do shoots anymore, potentially even. And that means that the role of different operators in the process becomes different. Instead of iterating throughout the course of the process, you have to wait until the result is there, and then you look at the final results, and then you see, did this fulfill the brief or not? And that makes the role of the creative director slightly different, and the role of the collaborator slightly different as well. Would anybody like to add to that?
First of all, I think when we say how will AI change the workflow, my number one thing is I think it removes the drudgery from creative work, which is not enlightening and not anything that anyone wants to do. So in our case, for instance, for Black Friday, we do 15,000 pieces in 30 languages. We used to manually resize every single one for every channel, hit the translation, QA it, and it took us 16 weeks to do that, which means you're way out locking before you're close to the event. And so when we changed it using kind of APIs, scaled automation, we shrunk that process. We cut it in half, which means you have a lot more agility close to market. And it freed up a lot of people's time. Like they could go do other campaign strategic work and weren't locked down in kind of resizing or reframing pieces. So I think that's one really important change for the better in the creative process.
That's interesting that you mentioned that because that's how it's impacted you. How does that impact the role of the marketer now that the workflows have changed? Christine, maybe you have a perspective there.
Yeah, I actually think the things that are really cumbersome for marketers, like analytics, media planning, creative optimization, I think if they use it correctly, those things become your co-pilot, and it gets you to focus on the strategy and the vision. It has you ask the right questions to continue to make sure that you're raising the bar on innovation, but you're still sort of the curator of the ecosystem. Like, you know, we used to say data-driven marketers. I think we say AI-driven marketers now. And if you use it correctly, I actually think marketing and creative can be one of the most invaluable things that AI is used for.
Well, and you have a first-hand perspective on that side of the business. Olga, from your side, what do you think is the new role of the marketer?
Well, I'm a simple person. I see the world in black and white. There are two camps for me. One is a camp of people who like exploring AI. I call them death by piloting. So these are the marketeers who don't want to change the processes just yet, but let's see what AI can bring us. So let's layer a couple of plug-and-play situations on top of our existing processes. And then the second camp for me are the system architects, actually people who look at the AI play in a broader way, in a holistic way, and they really want to redesign the processes, the partnerships, the platforms they work with, so that AI is fully enabled and unlocked.
Similarly, the role of the marketer is changing, and so is the role of the creative director, right? It has become a very different kind of role because different touch points in the process are being interacted with, right? And also, there's a question of how can we maintain the integrity of the creative at the front end of the process before the data feeds into the machine? Pat, do you have a perspective on that?
Thanks, Tanya. First of all, to say this is not just about technology. This is about enhancing the creative. So using the technologies that we're going to be talking about here today, or we are talking about here today, should be in service of the creative. We shouldn't forget that. So if it's not in service of the advertising idea, then it's wasted money, in my view. But as far as the creative director is concerned, I think for their futures, they're not just going to be directing humans, they're going to be directing algorithms as well, and working as a QC on what's coming out of the AI, and also adding as a kind of an editor-in-chief of that stuff.
Yeah.
Can I add to that? Because Pat and I were talking upstairs, and we're like, look, there's a lot of creative out there today, right? And I think AI actually maybe like exacerbates that problem by letting you do bad creative more. And what's really going to shine is human taste and human ingenuity. So the bar will be lowered, which is a good thing for young people, for young lions, for young creatives to onboard, because I think with generative AI, like with Firefly, you can ideate 100 ideas, whereas maybe before you could only get 4 down on paper. So that's a great additive. But that means that your taste is really the differentiator in the end product.
It's about doing, in my view, it's about doing the right stuff faster. Nothing more or less than that. And obviously it comes back to creativity. And, I think this is a superpower for the creatives, right? And I know, Hannah, you touched on it just now. This is about taking away the stuff that drains you of energy when you're doing creative work, to free you up to do experimentation, to explore and have fun, much more fun than you would have normally. It's really just a superpower.
Earlier today, I was speaking to one of our executive creative directors, and I asked him the question because I wanted to know his perspective. And he gave me a very interesting response. He said that from a strategic perspective, you want to make sure that the thing that you're creating with the machine has some degree of purpose behind it, right? We don't want to get to a place where we're creating an agentic video where the point of the video is just to say, this is what the computer can do. Because ultimately, that's not the point of advertising. You're trying to move people, evoke emotion. So there's a difference there. And we have to be striving for that, I think, in creation. And similarly, there's something that someone else in the audience told me about, which is what happens when you feed data into the model and that data has a bias to it, right? What does that mean for the automated workflow? How do we clean that up? How do we make sure that what we're creating is, let's say, bias-free or has integrity with the brand? And this I'll ask Christine. What are your thoughts on the role of brand guardianship in this new world of automated workflows?
Yeah, I mean, I think creativity is sort of curation of possibilities, really. And if you think about the history of mankind, there's the right side of the brain, there's the left side of the brain. And many marketers are one or the other. I actually think that AI has the ability to really help be that co-pilot for them so they can think about the new things, while the large language models are really taking in all of the things that human creation has created in the past and fueling that for the future, but not necessarily creating that new. For us, we think about things like localization. We're a global company of 190 countries that we operate in.
Yep.
We're all here. I think this area right here is very American speaking, which is great, English speaking. But when you go somewhere else, it's very hard, and localization has been a really hard thing for marketers to crack. And AI is really changing that at a really fast clip. We're also a platform that 25 years old, our 25th anniversary this year, it was built on the premise of human reviews, of trust, of really guiding other people through that journey. And as we look at partnerships that we're doing with a lot of the AI platforms and the social platforms, there's never been more interest in making sure that their LLMs are grounded in human-centric review quality, sentiment, things that are ultimately going to guide people with trust. So to me, it's really an unlock to make sure that you're grounding it in reality, but really thinking about a futuristic way where the art and science meet in the best creative way possible.
So selfishly, I want to follow up with that. As a representative of my agency, what do you expect of the agency in terms of guarding your brand in the course of this transformation?
Yeah, I'll tell you with some of these big partnerships, it's risky, right? I think the AI evolution is moving at the fastest clip in technology history we've ever seen. Mm-hmm. So what we've done is set really clear brand guidelines up front, creative guidelines, think through sort of the voice and the sentiment that must have a human touch to it. So it's not fully automated through AI. But the things that are cumbersome and really don't matter are sort of what our agency partners are taking on. I have a creative studio that does a lot of work with brand partnerships, and there's so many things that have driven 10x efficiency and sort of the back end work that they're doing, so they can really focus on the things that are driving innovation.
Yeah.
Can I pick up on that as well?
Absolutely,
There's a couple of
please.
other things I'd like to add to that, because having guardrails is so important, but a couple of other risks which are worth mentioning, and it kind of gets left off the conversation. AI is not very eco-friendly.
No?
It is not sustainable at all, and it never features in the conversation. And particularly when brands are moving along and they're very excited about this stuff, I'd love to find a way to find AI and the use of AI more sustainable. It uses a huge amount of energy, and let's bring that back into the conversation again. A couple of other risks, of course, is copyrights.
Yeah.
A lot of our clients have absolutely freaked out about copyright. Obviously, we've got a lot of lawsuits going on right now with Midjourney and Disney. There's the John Grisham thing that's going on, and in the UK, they're trying to take the conversation away from people like Elton John, who's really freaked out about his copyright being used because they're changing the way that they're going to allow artists and creatives to use the AI machines to learn. And I think copyright is a really big part of this conversation. It's part of the ethics conversation with our clients.
So you bring up two valid points. First, around sustainability and also copyright. Now, it's not. We can have multiple conversations just on that, but taking a piece of that, inserting copyright validation into the workflow is very important, I would say. And part of it, touching on the human element of what you were speaking about, is change management, right? How do we ensure that we can help our teams through the journey and the transformation and what it means? Because you all come from different areas, from production consultancy, from client side, from Adobe, from agency side. How do we get our teams in that journey? Olga, what is your perspective on that?
You don't want to know?
Tell us, be controversial.
Yeah, okay. I really don't want to spend time on motivating people to use AI. Why? Because we just don't have a luxury of it. Therefore, I prefer to work with motivated people, and I invest in the core, rebel core, that really wants to explore and pioneer. They create new workflows, we standardize them, and we publish a training. And then it goes to the rest of the people to just adopt the new process.
Yeah.
For history helps.
Yep.
And if you look at patterns of any intersection of creativity and technology, the first step is fear and rejection.
Yep.
So whether it was the camera in the 1800s, when painters said painting is dead because of the camera, clearly not true. Lots of different art styles, Picasso, Kahlo, coming out of that technology revolution. And even for Photoshop in the 90s, when we launched Photoshop, now it's a verb. We all love it. It's fine. Artists were very angry. People said, you're destroying craft. That's not my craft. So we had to bring an artist in David Hockney, and he jammed on it, and he like legitimized the idea of digital art. So I think we're in early innings. So there will be early adopters. I respect that you're like, I don't have time to motivate somebody to get on board. But I do think it's important to bring people along. So in our case, if you're going to revamp an entire creative workflow from brief to paid push and 30 countries, you have to bring teams along and change the workflow around it, and agency workflow too.
Yeah, and Pat, in your world, how do you advise clients when they come to you and they say, I don't know where to start?
Well, I think historically, creative partners of clients have always had to do a certain element of training. You have a lot of junior brand managers, even senior people in client side, where they've relied on their creative partners to give them training on going on a shoot or whatever. But it's the same thing with AI, and they're not really willing to pay for it. But if you can build a relationship with a client where you are doing a certain amount of in-house training for them, that is part of the relationship that you build. And we talked about it this morning. I know you did. Say that there's really should be paid for it, but actually, no clients are going to pay for this stuff.
It's true.
It's also a big thing within my own business. We have a lot of legacy people who are used to the old ways of doing things, and we have to spend a lot of investment and time and energy training our own teams to upskill. Where people are not willing to do that, well, we let them go. It's simple.
Yeah, I'll just add to that too, because I think it's a big topic for all of us with big organizations. I think you need to be the example you want to see. Yep. And then show those use cases, whether it's in your personal life or your professional life, on the ways that you're leading from the top to actually make sure that the team is seeing it as a co-pilot and something that can accelerate their career versus something that can actually take their job away.
But back to, we talked about this upstairs.
Yep.
The education gap is huge.
Yep.
We are in early innings. And I just want to pick up on what Pat said about copyright. I mean, our whole concept is around keeping the creative community whole and vibrant. If we collapse IP protection, by saying it's okay to use models that just use without rights, I mean, that really challenges the future of creativity and creative work. So I would encourage people to educate themselves on the nutrition label of the models and what was that data, what went into that model, and see if you're comfortable with that. I think it's an important part of the process.
And actually, that's a brilliant segue into my final question, you'll all be happy to hear, around authenticity. Can a piece of content produced in whole or in part through an automated workflow, AI, generative or whatnot, retain its authenticity? What is required? Is it possible? What is an authentic asset? Pat, go ahead.
Shall I pick up on that?
Yeah. You're itching for it. Go on.
Put the Duracell batteries in me and I'll go on for another half an hour. Authenticity, I'm not sure what that means. In my view, it's about building an emotional connection. If you can use AI technology to make people still feel something, whether you can make them laugh or make them cry, then does it matter whether it's a machine or whether it's a human doing the work? I still see a load of stuff generated by AI, and it's soulless. Not many people know that I'm a trainer of hypnosis. I have a theory that the unconscious mind actually knows whether this is generated by a machine or not.
I would love to test that theory sometime.
Yeah, we should do that.
Yeah.
But I think if you can build an emotional connection, it doesn't matter whether it's a machine or a human.
That is a great perspective. Anybody want to add on to that?
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree. I think intuition is always going to play a part. There will be one-hit wonders that are fully AI generated, and I think those things will continue to be an example that you can't live off of. I think the human-centric approach is always going to be a part of the process, where instincts and the things that that are around the corner will be a part. And that's why I think, travel is a very visual, it's a very emotional, it's a high-stakes sort of thing that you spend your money on with your family and create memories. I will always believe that there'll be some level of human centricity and sort of the creation of that, but I do believe that there's a huge amount of opportunity with AI to really bring that experience together and way more frictionless.
I think AI really needs a better PR agent, because everything we've learned is from sci-fi movies.
We can make that agent.
We can no, but I'm serious. I mean, like we've learned. Oh, the AI is going to take over my role. It's gonna be as creative as I am. That is not the purpose. This is another paintbrush in the toolbox.
Yep.
It is not meant to replace. And I actually like the Copyright Office's guidance, which is what's copyrightable out of AI. It has to have had a lot of human manipulation, a lot of human ingenuity added to the process. I don't think we're going to see one push ads, 30-second spots straight out of a model anytime soon. Like that all looks uncanny valley to most people.
I don't know. I've seen some really cool stuff that kind of gets there. I think again, what really needs focus now is the emotional output of the agentic videos and the narrative and the storytelling. The storytelling is not going to go away anytime soon. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. If you have any questions for the panelists, please find them at the bar. And thank you.